Greetings, this is Bradford Townsend. It is October 4th, 2018. This video will be called Wind Turbine Flatulence. I'm going to read an article from the Spectator magazine of the UK. Wind turbines are neither clean and they provide zero global energy. We urgently need to stop ecological posturing and invest in gas and nuclear. By Matt Ridley. The Global Wind Energy Council recently released its latest report, excitedly boasting that the proliferation of wind energy into the global power market continues at a furious pace. After it was revealed that more than 54 gigawatts of clean, renewable wind power was installed across the global market last year. You may have got the impression from the announcements like that and from obligatory pictures of wind turbines in any BBC story or airport advert about energy that wind power is making a big contribution to world energy today. You would be wrong. Its contribution is still, after decades, nay centuries of development, trivial to the point of irrelevance. Here's a quiz. No conferring to the nearest whole number. What percentage of the world's energy consumption was supplied by wind power in 2014, the last year for which there are reliable figures? Was it 20%, 10%, 5%? None of the above. It was 0%, that is, to the nearest whole number. There is still no wind power on Earth. Even put together, wind and photovoltaic solar are supplying less than 1% of global energy demand from the International Energy Agency's 2016 Key Renewables Trends. We can see that wind provided 0.46% of global energy consumption in 2014, and solar and tide combined provided 0.35%. Remember, this is total energy, not just electricity, which is less than a fifth of all final energy. The rest being the solid, gaseous, and liquid fuels that do the heavy lifting for heat, transport, and industry. Such numbers are not hard to find, but they don't figure prominently in reports on energy derived from the unreliables lobby, solar and wind. Their trick is to hide behind the statement that close to 14% of the world's energy is renewable, with the implication that this is wind and solar. In fact, the vast majority, 3/4, is biomass, mainly wood, and a very large part of this is traditional biomass, sticks, logs, and dung, burned by the poor in their homes to cook with. These people need that energy, but they pay a big price in health problems caused by smoke inhalation. Even in rich countries, playing with subsidized wind and solar, a huge slug of their renewable energy comes from wood and hydro. The reliable renewables, meanwhile, world energy demand has been growing at about 2% a year for nearly 40 years. Between 2013 and 14, again, using International Energy Agency data, it grew by just under 2,000 terawatt hours. If wind turbines were to supply all that growth, but no more, how many would need to be built each year? The answer is nearly 350,000, since a 2 megawatt turbine can produce about 0.005 terawatt hours per annum. That's 1.5 times as many as have been built in the world since governments started pouring consumer funds into the so-called industry in the early 2000s. At a density of very roughly 50 acres per megawatt, typical for wind farms, that many turbines would require a land area greater than the British Isles, including Ireland. Every year, if we kept this up for 50 years, we would have covered every square mile of a land area the size of Russia with wind farms. Remember, this would be just to fill the new demand for energy, not to displace the vast existing supply from fossil fuels, which currently supply 80% of global energy needs. Do not take refuge in the idea that wind turbines could become more efficient. There is little to know how much energy you can extract from a moving fluid. The bet's limit. The wind turbines are already close to it. Their effectiveness, the load factor to use the engineering term, is determined by wind that is available and that varies at its own sweet will from second to second, day to day, year to year. As machines, wind turbines are pretty good already. The problem is the wind resource itself, and we cannot change that. It's a fluctuating stream of low-density energy. Mankind stopped using it for mission-critical transport and mechanical power long ago for sound reasons. It's just not very good. As for resource consumption and environmental impacts, the direct effects of wind turbines killing birds and bats, sinking concrete foundation deep into wildlands is bad enough. But out of sight and out of mind is the dirty pollution generated in Inner Mongolia by the mining of rare earth metals for the magnets in the turbines. This generates toxic and radioactive waste on an epic scale, which is why the phrase clean energy is such a sick joke, and ministers should be ashamed every time it passes their lips. It gets worse. Wind turbines, apart from the fiberglass blades, are made mostly of steel with concrete bases. They need about 200 times as much material per unit of capacity as a modern combined cycle gas turbine. Steel is made with coal, not just to provide the heat for smelting ore, but to supply the carbon in the alloy. Cement is also often made using coal. The machinery of clean renewables is the output of fossil fuel economy and largely the coal industry. A 2 megawatt wind turbine weighs about 250 tons, including the tower, nacelle, rotor, and blades. Globally, it takes about half a ton of coal to make a ton of steel. Add another 25 tons of coal for making the cement, and you're talking 150 tons of coal per turbine. Now, if you are to build 350,000 world wind turbines a year, or a smaller number of bigger ones, just to keep up with increasing energy demand, that would require 500 million tons of coal a year. That's about half the European Union's hard coal mining output. Forgive me if you have heard this before, but I have a commercial interest in coal. Now it appears that the black stuff also gives me a commercial interest in clean green wind power. The point of running through these numbers is to demonstrate that it is utterly futile on an a priori grounds even to think that wind power can make any significant contribution to world energy supply, let alone to emissions reductions, without ruining the planet. As the late David McKay pointed out years back, the arithmetic is against such unreliable renewables. The truth is, if you want to power civilization with fewer greenhouse gas emissions, then you should focus on shifting power generation, heat, and transport to natural gas, the economically recoverable reserves of which, thanks to horizontal drilling and hydraulic fracturing, are much more abundant than we dreamed they ever could be. It is also the lowest emitting of the fossil fuels, so the emissions intensity of our wealth creation can actually fall while our wealth continues to increase. Good. Let's put some of that burgeoning wealth into nuclear fission and fusion so that it can take over from gas in the second half of this century. That is an engineerable, clean future. Everything else is a political displacement activity, one that is actually counterproductive as a climate policy, and worst of all, shamefully robs the poor to make the rich even richer. Spectator.co.uk, Matt Ridley. I'd just like to add that what we're doing with windmills is we are taking and putting the pollution and the suffering into Asia, where the mining and smelting of the materials, you do have to mine the rare earth metals using toxic smelting processes, and the general manufacturing where there's very little labor and environmental protections, and transferring the pollution to the other side of the planet away from the end users, and you're converting fossil fuel energy primarily into electricity through a device, a wind turbine. When all is said and done, the transportation, maintenance, mining, a full life cycle analysis, including recycling, is done. The return on investment is, as far as an energy viewpoint, is certainly probably below the 17 number needed, 17 to 1 ratio to maintain an advanced civilization. Thank you very much, and have a wonderful day.